because Nancy Frates is joining us this morning.
Good morning.
And good morning. How are you?
I'm good.
We're
in Florida.
Yeah. So we had a great event last night at Ore and Iron.
I heard.
And your husband, John, came down, and we were reminiscing about this entire region, sharing your family story and all that was accomplished when it came to the Ice Bucket Challenge and all of those things. And so I'm so glad you guys came by this morning.
Well, thank you for having us.
And you go way back with Courtney and way back with Curtis, right?
Of course.
Yeah, Boston.
Fellow Eagle.
The Eagles, double Eagles.
Come
triple
on,
Eagles.
go Eagles.
But what were you telling me? How do you know when somebody went to Boston College?
Oh, because they'll tell you.
Yes, okay. All right.
Same can be said about a Rolex.
Or Rolodex, as I heard you. That's a certain age point.
That's Ask a Boomer. A Rolodex is Ask a Boomer. You guys continue with Pete's mission and your mission. I went to the captain's ball this past fall. Yeah. It was extraordinary. And tell us a little bit about kind of what you guys are doing when it comes to continuing to support those who are fighting ALS.
Sure. I think when ALS affects you, it just grabs you. You can't leave it. And, of course, it was our child. So, Pete told us, it's 12 years ago now. It was March 13th, 2012, when he got diagnosed, and told us that we were going to change the trajectory of the disease. He said that 6 hours after diagnosis. So when your kid looks at you and says, Ma, we're going to get to work. Dad, we're going to get to work. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. And with his passing back in December of 2019, we had a broader scope of what it meant to get the diagnosis of ALS because we lived with it for 8 years. And we understand the journey so intimately that we knew we had to make a difference. So we created the Peter Frates Family Foundation during Pete's last year of life because of the enormous out-of-pocket cost for home health care that you need as the patient progresses on the journey. So that is our simple mission of this foundation. It is to help pay for out-of-pocket home health care costs, which when you're diagnosed, not only are you told that you only have 3 to 5 years to live and it's 100% fatal, but that when you're in the throes of this disease, it's probably going to cost your family $250,000 a year to take care of them.
Not covered by insurance.
Not covered by insurance.
Which
no.
is
it's
a crime in this country. It's a
crime. It's absurd. So we very simply, through our journey, we have great connections in the ALS organizations. And so we work with them and they refer patients to us that are, to a level where they are at a financial, which really, honestly, it's within months of getting the diagnosis. But, and we turn it around it's a pretty simply run foundation in that we know that when you receive a sizable amount of money, we can get it to them quickly so that they can keep their patient in the home where they're loved.
Yeah, and oftentimes stay in their home.
That's what
and take care of. There are, as you guys experience, there are other siblings, and there are you somehow have to live life while you're fighting this in your case with Pete.
Exactly. And, unfortunately, we all know what the end game is right now with ALS. So every minute with that person is so precious that you want them to be in the home. The government will pay for you to put them in a nursing home. Mm. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, they should pay to help keep them at home.
Right,
yeah.
And it's just amazing, like where you get the worst news you could possibly get that your kid's dying and there's no cure, and then you get told if you want to have them at home and keep some semblance of normalcy in the limited time they have left, here's $250,000 bill at your doorstep as well. But I just think what you and Pete and John and Andrew and the whole family, you guys created a roadmap of how to deal with the worst possible thing with grace and to enable the people that get that news after you guys have to have a more optimistic future. It's just every time I think about what that moment must have been like, and then to see today, 10 years later, this little ice bucket and a challenge that started, as I was saying to John last night, is like this thing in the BC community, and then it went a little bit to the Boston sports media community, and then then the governor did it, and then it was like, okay, now it's Justin Timberlake somehow. And it's just so amazing, and the vulnerability you showed with at the end when you guys were talking about how you needed help because of the insane end-of-life costs that you were facing is just something that I don't think it'll ever leave our world, the Ice Bucket Challenge. Like, I hope ALS is cured and we can move on to something else. But what that did and how social media sucks 90% of the time, but it was one of the few times where social media provided you guys the bullhorn to get the world to hear about Pete Frates, and it's just every time I think about it, I get goosebumps.
And it's the living legacy of Pete.
Right.
Right. It's Pete who showed that grace and gave us the roadmap and took the adversity and turned it into triumph. He was the one that got the diagnosis. The family got the diagnosis, but Pete is the one that was the leader. And so I always kind of encapsulate and title the Ice Bucket Challenge. It's a tribute to a life well lived. Pete was like that his whole life. He was a leader. He was captain at St. John's Prep of his teams. Then he goes to BC, and he was a recruited walk-on. A lot of people don't know that, but he literally went from that to captain of the team. And it's just that he understood that he had to be the best he could be so that he could rise others around him to be the best they could be. And that's how he attacked this. And he called it his new team. That night he goes, oh, so this is my new team. So we are the living legacy of him, and we keep it. We're still very involved in ALS. Matter of fact, we're flying back to Boston next week. Amylex, which is in Cambridge, the drug company that came out with Relivio a year ago, which is showing great promise in slowing the disease progression down. Not a cure, but that seed money, it's a beautiful story. Amylex was two college students that came up with this formula. Were out on the streets in 2014, 2015 trying to get seed money and VC money, and the ALS Association gave them Ice Bucket Challenge money to start, which allowed others to give, and then we came to market 2 years ago with this drug.
That is a really successful new approach. I talk a lot about my friend Bob Coughlin, and he and Joe O'Donnell did that with cystic fibrosis, and he was able to extend, and theoretically, based on how successful it goes, with that particular drug, his son's life. It's really, it's an extraordinary way to look at it. The doctors and the researchers and the scientists do incredible stuff, but as an alternative to invest in these companies that may end up someday finding a cure is a really inventful approach to doing it. And so,
because it is about money in pharma, and that's kind of the bottom line. You're coming from the passion and the heartbreak to try to get this going, but then you look at it and it's a business. So that's exactly it. But
whose idea was the very first Ice Bucket Challenge?
Sure. Well, the quick story, Steve Buckley, our friend Steve Buckley, wrote a great in The Athletic about exactly. He went like crazy and drove it down. It started in Arizona for a coach who actually was suffering from breast cancer. Now, if you think about a lot of people don't understand this. Why the sports world gets it is because what does a winning coach get? They get a Gatorade. Right? So this is how this happened. She got it, then kind of hit the internet in it was college basketball, I believe, and hit the internet. Blah blah blah. Makes its way to the PGA. PGA in Florida. A kid in Florida whose cousin in New York had ALS. He decided he was going to do it, and he just sent it to his cousin. Well, she's the one, Jeanette Senersha, up in Yonkers, New York, who actually went on her porch, poured it over her head, and said, this is for ALS, and she tagged 3 people. Well, the 3 people that she tagged, one of them was on Facebook. Now, again, we're talking Facebook
Yeah.
in 2014, okay? So it was a little bit more simplified.
Kurt is still big on Facebook.
I am too. All right. You know what? Oh, gee, we love it.
Okay, don't listen to a word he said.
He's on there
Greg's
with the
on
rest.
MySpace.
He's on there with the rest of the moms and the grandmothers, but
I
we
was
don't
gonna
want
say
Nancy.
that.
I don't want to freak you out. Go ahead.
And actually, Pete had been become very good friends with a young man named Pat Quinn, who had been diagnosed a year after him, who happened to live in the same town. And one of the girls who posted it to Facebook was a mutual friend of his. He saw it. He knew that Pete, we had pretty much a good engine, as Courtney and Chris know, within the BC community, the Boston community. He said, I got to get this to Pete. And Pete took it and looked at it like a business and said, this is what we're going to do. And honestly, Greg, it was within 48 hours that it just, I mean, if you could have been in our house. Now, you got to remember, the greatest part of the story is that Julie, Pete's wife, at the time on August 1st, was due with their baby. So when the media started calling, and I think Chris will probably remember, and they wanted to do interviews, we were like, well, Julie can't go anywhere because, so you got to come to the house. So we lived on a cul-de-sac, and our neighbors, God love them, would just watch the media trucks coming in and out. They'd bring us pizzas, but we knew it was very simple. It was business, right? Yeah. So we knew we wanted to catch we wanted to light a fire, but we wanted to expand it. So we just really worked it, and $250 million, $250 million. Sorry, $250 million.
$250 million.
Yep, 17 million Ice Bucket Challenge videos posted to Facebook, viewed by 440 million unique viewers, over 10 billion times.
That's unbelievable.
That is amazing.
It's amazing. So, real quick, tell us about the Captain's Ball. When is that?
Sure. The Captain's Ball is September 18th, the Thursday night, 18th of the 19th this year. We've moved our location this year. We're going to SOA, the power station down.
We love it.
We were there for New Year's Eve. We had a Greg Hill Foundation
I heard
event
yeah.
there.
Yeah, I think that might have been part of the impetus for us to look at it. Ray Bork, such a great friend to our family. He called us 4 weeks after Pete passed away and said, we're gonna change our gala and have it be for ALS. So the money, we get some of the money, our foundation does, but the majority of the money goes to MGH, the Healy Center for ALS, for the research and the drug, the trials to get it out to patients.
Awesome.
And we're expecting, big things this year. So it's growing every year. It's going to be our third year. So we're really looking forward to it.
Well, I admire so much the way you guys have dealt with what you've dealt with. And it's awesome to have you here. Awesome to hang out with John last night.
Thank you.
Did he get home late? Did he have a curfew?
He didn't, but he didn't come home soaking wet. So I assume that something didn't happen.
Yeah,
that
I think it's going to happen.
We're going to go down to the field during the break.
During the break, and do it down on the field during the break.
Yeah.
Great.
So, all right, guys.
We appreciate it. We're so
please let us
grateful
know
for your support.
Thank you.
Whatever
guys
we
are the
can do to help,
best.
keep us.
Yes.
Great to see you.
Call
Thank
us.
you. It's so great to see all of you.